Okay, are you coming up or no? Good morning. See, I got taller. This is amazing. Welcome to Northwest, a Unitarian Universalist congregation where we are gathering this morning both virtually and in person as one connected church community. My name is Trina. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm going to be your fabulous worship leader for this morning's service. And I always have shadows, so we'll have helpers. We, the members of Northwest Unitarian Universalist Congregation, aspire to be a developing, diverse, multi-generational, and inclusive congregation. To this end, we endeavor to treat each other with respect, trust, kindness, and patience, foster expression of ideas, beliefs, values, identities, and experiences, lift one another and the congregation as a whole, provide a supportive environment for all sharing hope on this journey, listen and learn together while caring for each other and the planet, build a fair, peaceful, and socially responsible world. Oh, we're going to be busy. May we create a beloved community with a gentle heart and thoughtful ear, and maintain this community with our 8 Unitarian Universalist principles as our guide. We welcome Reverend Julie Brock, our contract minister of worship, this morning, and her primary responsibility will be to provide direction on the planning and scheduling of all of these fun worship services, as well as the joint worship services with the First Unitarian Church of Detroit. We also have Todd Ballou, did I say that right? Look at that, okay. The music director at the First Unitarian Universalist, leading our choir and communal singing. Each month we contemplate a theme using Soul Matters. This month we are considering the concept of heritage. Today's message asks us to explore the question, how we can explore where we come from and how we allow ourselves to see the hopes and mistakes of our forebears. If you are a visitor online and would like Northwest to stay in touch with you, please fill out our visitor form appearing in the chat box. Wait for it, it's coming. If you are with us in person, you can fill out the visitor sign-in form in the atrium. And so now's the fun time where we all get to greet our neighbors with a wave wherever you are. Make sure you get the camera to our friends on the Zooms. Good morning to all. Okay, and so we have a few, which is actually more than a few, but announcements to share with you. And so I've condensed them, so apologies, but there's too many of them. So you're gonna see more information in the order of service and we will all be fine. So first, most importantly, because this is super exciting to me, the Northwest Board is pleased to announce that Eva, where's Eva? Yay! Who has been serving as the acting director of religious education for the past couple of years, has been appointed to a permanent position. So I didn't even realize this wasn't a thing yet, but so I'm glad that it is. And Eva will now be our director of religious education. So congratulations, we're so happy to have you. Today's a potluck, it's over there. Liz Butler is gonna have some postcards for folks about Ohio, make it happen. Bring your chair if you wanna sit, that's critical. And then after service and or sort of while potlucking is happening, we're going to share a presentation of the shared ministry model between Northwest Unitarian and First Unitarian Universalist Detroit. There will be discussion. It'll be great. It's going to be co-facilitated, and that's happening today. And then, of course, if you need any support or pastoral care, and in light of the horrific escalation of violence in Israel and Palestine, our Minister of Pastor Care, Reverend Teresa Rolk, sorry, I'm getting it. She'll hold a drop-in Zoom between 1 and 2 tomorrow. Service auction, it's happening, happens every year. It's gonna be fantastic. Donate items, do your thing, and if you wanna help during the auction, contact Jan Berger-Cohn. There we go, awesome. Okay, and also the website is open for the service auction. So there's a QR code and other fun things that will appear in many places. So just find a phone and make it happen. And then we have the next, is it next? No, 2 weeks from now, October 29th at 10:30 is a joint worship service at First Unitarian. And that's, come build our collective ancestor altar. Oh, we're building a thing. So the altar is happening at First Unitarian. You have to bring a memento or a photograph of an ancestor you cherish. We're good. And all of that will be in an email, I'm assuming, somewhere. Okay. And now, before we begin the prelude, let's all take a deep breath. Do like a stretch, something. Settle into our time of worship.
So now I unplug the pluggable. It's going through. Now I've got sound. Sound, right. The pluggables, you know, the white and the black that coming into.
We begin our service today with a land acknowledgement. We honor and pay our respect to the land on which we live and work, which was violently stolen through colonialism, genocide, and forced removal of its traditional stewards. These stewards are the Anishinaabeg, the Council of the Three Fires, which include the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, also known as the Ottawa, Chippewa, and Potawatomi tribes. We also acknowledge the people of African descent who were forcibly removed from their lands and separated from their families through kidnapping and enslavement. We pay reverence and respect to them for building this country's infrastructure and economy with no compensation or reparations to date. We also begin our service by lighting a chalice, and I would like to invite UU Detroit's intern minister, Eli Krantz, up to light the chalice physically here today. You may be seeing him from time to time as pulpit supply. We light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, knowing this morning that many other Unitarian Universalist congregations across this land and around this world are doing the same. We do so with the words from Reverend Audette Fulbright Folson. We light, we kindle. This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from the brave, gentle, fierce, outspoken hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works, pass it boldly to the new generation. Please now sing Rise Up, O Flame. They're going to get it. Oh, there we go. Folks, I have a story for everyone today. Thank you for Eva, not only for being your permanent, no longer acting, we don't want to encase her in anything, director of religious education, but she also let me do something today that I really like to do, which is to tell the story. So I wondered, though, I have something to help me illustrate the story, and I wondered if anybody was willing to maybe help me illustrate the story. If anybody in the back wanted to come up and help me illustrate the story, I need a few people to help me illustrate this story. Do I have any takers? Any takers? Okay, so I'm going to need everyone to take 2 popsicle sticks. Anyone that wants to help me? Do you want to help, Trina? Amazing, thank you. Uriah will help. Eva's going to help me. What about you, Tom? You want to help demonstrate the story? Okay. I'm going to give one to Jim, and I think we should be good. All right. Let's get a choir member. Julie, do you want to? I like to get the choir in whenever possible. You want us? Okay. Here we go. We'll give you some popsicle sticks as well. So the story takes place in a land far, far away, a village out of time. And these villagers, they were very, very lucky because they all went to the same church. They all went to the same church. They liked their church. Everybody was happy. But the thing was, there used to be a little creek that separated the village and the church. And then by and by, as tends to happen, that creek got larger and it got larger and it got larger. And pretty soon, people needed help crossing the creek. Not many people could afford a boat. Rafts were not that sturdy. So they decided that they were going to build a bridge. We are bridge builders, right? So they decided they were going to build a bridge. But here's the problem. Lumber was scarce. Lumber was scarce. There was not a lot of lumber. So everyone decided that they were going to they each got 2 pieces of lumber. And everyone decided, okay, we're going to lay a piece of lumber directly from my house to cross the bridge to get to the church, because everyone wanted the bridge to be right where their house was, right? Nobody wants a commute. So everybody laid the piece of lumber across the bridge. Everybody take one of your pieces of lumber, just one, all right? And then they went and tried to go across the bridge, but it was just one flimsy piece of lumber. So when they put all their weight on it, what do you think happened? Put all your weight that you can on this. Try, just one. Oh, did everybody's break? Did anybody have? Yours hurt your hand, so not only did it break, but we had casualties. So everybody had this piece of lumber that was broken, and it wasn't really useful, and the folks thought, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then a little boy actually said, well, this seems pretty easy to break all on its own. But what if we put all the sticks together? What if we all took our piece of lumber and put them together? Can I borrow your piece? Are you willing to share? Can I borrow yours? Can I borrow yours and yours? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. All right, all right. I'm going to put one in for you back there, sir. And a few more for everybody else here in the congregation. And we're going to bundle them together and see what happens. Bundle these sticks together for a moment and see what happens. All right, now let's see. Can you break it? No? You want to try? All right, let Uriah try. No? No? Can you break it? All right, all right. Oh, no, you can't. Well, you're pretty big and strong. Anybody else want to try? What about you? You want to try, Trina? Oh, yeah. All right. Trina, I just saw her like whip through some announcements. She's got this. She's competent. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. So it turned out that all the people in the village realized that they could all continue to share in what they had all been having before, but instead of having a bridge that went exactly to their direct house, everybody needed to put their resources together. And then they were strong, and everything was possible. You're gonna, all right.
Okay, now it is time for our youth and their teachers to go to their classrooms. Today, in the youngest room, they'll be making lanterns, and in the older rooms, we'll be researching tribes around the world and having snack and joys and sorrows and having a good time together. So could I have Brooklyn come up? You may rise. We are going to sing our children out.
One purpose of a religious community is to encourage all who gather together to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will mutually support this self-supporting congregation and the shared plate recipient. Each month, Northwest shares 50% of the shared plate with a local nonprofit charity organization. The Social Justice Committee has selected the Lighthouse of Oakland County as our October shared plate recipient. Lighthouse endeavors to build equitable communities that alleviate poverty in partnership with and in service to individuals and families and organizations. You can do so in a variety of ways that are now visible on your screen. For those here in person, we will pass a collection basket for checks and cash.
I lit one more candle for those joys and sorrows that remain in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, and also for all of those whose lives are lost and disrupted in the Middle East with ongoing and escalating conflict. May we find peace. May we find peace. May those who are already joyous be shielded. May the weary find rest. May the sick find health. May the dying and those who love them find peace. And may we know that we are surrounded in a web of love that is with us always, a web that connects us to all that exists. May we spend a few moments now in silence, feeling our connection to this space, to each other, and to what is beyond. We will spend this moment in silence, and then we will come out singing number 1068, Rising Green. I invite you all to rise in body and or spirit and join in singing hymn number 1068.
Good morning. My name is Eli. My pronouns are he, him, and I am so enthralled to be with you this morning to talk about heritage. One of my favorite words is another H word, and it's heretic. This word has a lot of weight, a lot of history, but it translates simply from the Greek as choice. Our history is a history of heretics, people who made choices to worship in the way they wanted. And like most history, it isn't a straight line or fully maybe dotted in some places. Many forks have come together to form it, and some of them are more complicated than others. So the year is 1646, Cambridge, Massachusetts, September. A small group of Puritans have come together in response to a threat from England, who sought to dissolve the independent congregations that these early colonizers, developed. This, as they called it, independency, was the breeding ground for, quote, herd of heresies. I'm going to simplify this pretty complicated history just a little bit, but England basically didn't like that these small congregations were forming more democratic policies. This independence from the episcopacy had the danger of translating into independence when it came to political action. Nothing more dangerous than heretics with a political agenda. This group that met in 1646 would work together off and on from that September until August of 1648, where they officially adopted Richard Mather's platform of church discipline, which would be used to understand how to do church for the early American Puritans. Mather's work came to be known as the Cambridge Platform, and it detailed in 17 chapters how the New England churches were to be run. The first 4 chapters alone have to do with congregational polity, or in other words, a system in which every local church is independent, self-governed by its own members. As the platform itself defines it, a company of saints by calling, united into one body by a holy covenant, for the public worship of God and the mutual edification of one another in the fellowship of the Lord Jesus. Members, or saints, enter voluntarily and abide by a covenant. Tell me if this sounds familiar. The bond which united a congregation was a simple covenant which the members signed. It was not a creed, which was unnecessary. For that period, all the English Protestants were basically Calvinists. Nevertheless, the adoption of covenant, which was only an agreement to unite in a common purpose, rather than a creed as the basis for church membership, was a significant step, since it did not bind the members to a fixed, unchanging form of belief, but gave room for at least minor differences and in practice. This is from an article called The Significance and Influence of the Cambridge Platform of 1648 by Henry Wilder Foote. This adoption put them in direct juxtaposition with the Roman Catholic Church and the Church of England. The platform goes on to detail how the congregation will rule itself, and it was certainly a melting pot of styles. Jesus Christ was at the head like a king or a monarchy. Then there was rule by the officers like an aristocracy, but those officers were selected by the authority of the congregation. So there was a sprinkle of democracy in there as well. Congregation members could elect their leaders in and just as easily oust them. There were 2 positions that could be elected, deacon and elder. Elder was then broken down into further into minister and lay or ruling elders. Still sounding a little familiar to everybody? A deacon attended to the financial and worldly matters of the church, while ministers attended to the spiritual matters of the church. In the context of the time, this was radical, heretical even. The New England churches came together to protect the way of worship that they believed was the most holy. And it is a wild moment for me sometimes to see my own values in the hearts of colonizing Puritans. And the Puritans certainly didn't see themselves as radicals. In fact, they didn't even describe to the idea that they were independent. Foote, again, from the article, says, the synod disapproved of the term independent as applied to the churches, because in England, it was loosely used, this term, to cover up what John Cotton called those corrupt sects and heresies which showed themselves under the vast title of independency. So instead, they used the term congregational. So why am I talking to you about Puritans? Yes, those Puritans. I'm a seminarian at the moment, and I really can't do anything without a history lesson. So that's part of it. And it's in our history that we find the seeds of our heritage. And this history is part of our heritage as you use. How the Puritans came to know church was a thread of their history that we share in a tapestry of our own. A moment in time when our path joined briefly before they parted again here in America. In the beginning, there was no room for heresy, for choice, but by 1700, strict doctrines of sin and predestination began to shift and change. The other reason is for the part of the platform I haven't told you about yet, how congregations interacted with each other. Yes, the congregations were autonomous within themselves, but the synod agreed that they couldn't be islands upon themselves. They were spread apart with their own distinct communities, but there had to be rules of support, of communion with each other. The 6 ways they decided were taking thought for each other's welfare, consulting on any topic or cause where another church has more familiarity or information about a topic, admonishing another church even to the point of convening a synod of neighboring churches and ceasing communion with the offending church, allowing members of one church to fully participate and receive the Lord's Supper in another church, sending letters of recommendation when a member goes to a new church due to seasonal or permanent relocation, and financial support for poor churches. Communion is another word that comes from the Greek, koinonia. This word, like most Greek words, means a lot of things. It embodies the idea of fellowship, sharing, intimacy, joint participation. Remember, these congregations had an eye on England, who were threatening to interfere, squashing what they saw as a potential of an uprising. England saw these small and mighty congregations as a threat to their system of power, control, and political influence. I'm willing to admit that the Puritans were right in this thing, that when you have a community with a shared vision and a devotion to upholding the lives and the spirits of that community, you have a higher chance of survival. We don't have to take all the lessons from our congregational ancestors or agree with their theology. And we do have to wrestle with a history that was created, written, and implemented by colonizers. That's not an easy thing to wrestle with. But we are making a mistake if we decide to wrestle with it on our own and not within our community. We are a company of saints by calling, united into one body by a holy covenant for the public worship of God, the universe, humanity, and the mutual edification of one another. Thank you. There's a song after that. I'm going to turn it over to Todd because we have some instructions because we're going to all participate in this beautiful song together.
All right, we're going to sing around now. Todd, can you use that microphone because the Zoom people won't be able to hear you? Oh, yeah. Thank you. As I was saying, up there. The choir will demonstrate. There's 4 lines. Everybody is going to sing every line 2 times, and that's it. So let's get the choir into position here. We're going to split the group into, there's 4 parts. This is group 1. We might need to take a few from the middle and add to group 1.
This is group 2, this quarter, group 3, and group 4. So group 1, you're going to follow the people in the front over here. Raise your hands. Group 2, you're going to follow the choir members over here. Group 3, you get to follow these guys. And group 4, all right, here we go. This is first a demonstration. Where are we going? Where are we going? Oh, thank you. This is your chance to practice. Now line 2. And line 3. And now the last line. We're going to start again. Now it's a round, for real. Group 1 starts.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we
Now group 2. And group 3. And now 4. Guys drop out. And group 2 can drop out.
I know Unitarian Universalists are not always super big in believing in miracles, but I just heard a UU congregation sing around in tune. Nice to have the choir here, isn't it? So folks, I've been thinking a lot about this theme of heritage. I've been thinking about it all month long exactly, and it occurs to me that we Unitarian Universalists do not have a creation myth. We don't have a creation myth. I mean, there's that whole thing with John Murray, but if you want to talk about that, find me in coffee hour, because that's like a whole nother sermon. But we do not have an honest to goodness, mythological, passed down by spoken word tradition, totally apocryphal creation myth. So I made one up. Do you want to hear it? All right. Thank you for indulging me. So once upon a time, in the magical faraway kingdom of Massachusetts, there were a group of people called the UUs. Yes, I'm conflating them before the merger for the ease of storytelling. So the UUs were people that were gentle and loving upon the earth. They were kind toward their fellow human being and had lots of discussions around potlucks about how kind they should be to the animals. The UUs were solid stock, but there was an issue. You heard it already. The UUs were up against a tyrannical, evil British Empire. I want to apologize to my friend Lizzie, who's sitting in the back knitting. She is actually a British UU. she's actually a British Unitarian, but creation myths don't often leave a lot of room for nuance, so we're just going to keep going. So the people were up against this evil, awful, tyrannical, maybe heretical British Empire. We were probably the heretics. And so the supreme being, whatever supreme being, either metaphorical or literal, works for you in your creation myth, came down and said, you are clearly in the right. You are the underdogs. We're going to again pass over that colonialization stuff because creation myths also don't leave a lot of room for moral ambiguity, and they needed to be the good guys in this story so that the creators could say, so that the supreme being could say, look, I have a gift for you. And in their hand, they created a burning ball of flame. And they said, I am going to place this inside each UU. This is going to be a righteous sense of justice. And every time you see injustice or unfairness or your values being trampled in the world, you will have superpowers. You will have superpowers. You will have the power to create communities, organizations, structures, and thank you. I'll have a good amen. It's all right. And you will have the power to destroy. You will have the power to challenge unjust structures and systems and rulers. But be careful. Be careful, because after all, this is an allegory. There has to be a twist. Because we feel righteous injustice and personal indignation in the same spaces, you will always have to discern when your superpower is triggered, whether or not you are witnessing injustice in the world or something is happening that you just don't like. And so the UUs, with their superpower, went on to defeat the evil British Empire. Sorry, Lizzie. And they went on to build communities of hope and love. They were so good at building things that several of them became lumber barons. And they saw another kingdom, the far-off kingdom of Michigan. And Michigan was filled with all kinds of beautiful trees and forests. So the UUs decided to move to Michigan and populate it and be bearers of justice and love here in this space forevermore. Amen. I mean, it's a beautiful story, right? It's a beautiful story, and it does what a good creation myth needs to do. It adds a little magical realism to what actually could have happened. We did, in Michigan, start as Bostonian lumber barons coming over from Boston, I guess Bostonian, lumber barons coming over from Boston to set up Unitarian and some Universalist communities, although those also weren't lumber barons. Again, see me in coffee hour, it's complicated. And Our Unitarian and Universalist forebears did have righteous indignation. They got in trouble for things like opposing the Fugitive Slave Act. They got in trouble for things like putting women in the pulpit. I don't know about that one. So they did have this sense of righteous indignation, this sense of justice in the world, and also they were people of privilege. They came here to cut down the trees, to destroy some things. They had the power to do both. It's funny, as I think about how the Unitarian Universalist churches in this area came to be where they are, how they are, I can almost see those little balls of indignation lighting in people's bellies. You know, we were here in the 1830s, the Unitarians and the Universalists worshiping separately for the most part. But then in 1932, like 29 years before the UU merger, something happened to the Unitarians in Detroit. Something happened to the Unitarians that made their little ball of indignation flare up. It was unfair. The city decided that they needed to widen the main thoroughfare, Woodward Avenue of the city. And you see the Unitarians, they were the posh ones. They had the money, so of course they had the prime real estate right there on Woodward Avenue. And the city said, sorry, we're going to chop off the front of your church. Nothing to be done about it. Unitarians were very upset about this, and they were like, that is unjust and that is unfair, and we will do things. And the Universalists heard about it. They were worshiping about a mile away, and they heard about it, and they said, you know what? You come be here with us. You just come temporarily, 6 months. Let's try it. You come be here with us. We're going to worship together. And 2 years later, it worked out so well that they merged the congregations. In 1934, the Unitarians and the Universalists merged in Detroit, one of the first mergers of Unitarian and Universalist congregations here in the States. And they were doing so well. They were doing so well by living their values in the world, by contributing to human rights and civil liberties, that they started to grow and grow and grow. Just 5 years later, they seated a church in Grosse Pointe. And then, even though you've seen that mammoth building downtown, it was swelling with people. And so just 13 years after that, in 1952, the folks that lived in the northwest suburbs of Detroit decided they wanted their own community. And so with blessings and funds from the original church, they said, yes, more. And we saw these lights light up in them saying, we should have every community that has a place, a beacon of hope. Pretty soon, there were congregations in Birmingham and Royal Oak and Windsor and Rochester. Not all of them are still here, but they were then. Even those rugged Universalists that were hanging out in Farmington, they got an intentional infusion of people and cash from First UU because the church at the time had 900 members. It was one of the biggest in the country. There was enough to spare, and clearly everything was growing because we were living our values in the world. That's one way to tell the story. And it's mostly true. There's other things. Do you know that today, First Unitarian Universalist Church has a trust? We have a trust, and it's great, and it's wonderful, and it is stewarded by some beautiful people in our congregation who are utterly unelected, and the congregation has no say in what happens to that money. And do you want to know why that happened? Not because of the beautiful people that are stewarding it. They didn't set it up that way. It was the Unitarians. When they brought their money over to the Universalists, they said, we don't want those non-posh people to have access to our money. So they set up this strange, undemocratic process where the congregation actually isn't in charge of its own destiny. And you know that church in Grosse Pointe, just 5 years later, that was set up? Well, it's called the Grosse Pointe Unitarian Church, not the Grosse Pointe Unitarian Universalist Church, because you see, there were folks in Grosse Pointe who thought, I don't want to have to, their little ball of righteous indignation came up and said, I don't want to have to share my church with Universalists. And to this day, in Michigan, the wealthiest areas, Birmingham and Grosse Pointe, they don't have Unitarian Universalist churches. They have Unitarian churches. And while First Church Detroit had plenty of members and money in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, due to racist policies that broke apart communities and encouraged white flight, the church started dwindling in members and in numbers. And the congregations that it had seeded in the suburbs began to grow. They began to benefit from the same racist policies that they were actively fighting against. And I'm not calling it out because it's anyone's fault. Nobody wanted it to be that way. But I'm calling it out because it happened, and we have to talk about the truth, right? Right, thank you, yes. And so, and I think the most interesting congregation around here is the congregation of Beacon in Troy. Do you all know Beacon in Troy? There's a congregation called Beacon in Troy. That congregation came out of the merger of two other congregations. There was a congregation called Paint Creek in Rochester, and there was a congregation called Emerson, which was, I'm not actually sure where Emerson was. That might have been in Royal Oak. But there was a congregation named Emerson. Emerson split off of Emerson split off of BUC because something happened somewhere that somebody didn't like. I don't know the story. I don't know if it was justice or indignation or what, but something happened somewhere that somebody didn't like. Emerson decided they couldn't be with with Birmingham anymore, and they split off in the 1990s. But just 2 decades later, they realized that they couldn't make it on their own. So they merged with Paint Creek in Rochester. And now they're the Beacon congregation in Troy. We have the ability to tear apart and the ability to build things up. Almost every minister I know has story upon story of their communities doing beautiful, deep community building, especially when times got hard, because they committed to community, because they know that community is hard, but it's worth it. And every minister I know has a folder in their office filled with letters from parishioners who have told them that when times got hard, that they were going to leave the congregation because something happened there that they didn't like. We have the power to build up or to tear down. So here's my ask of you. In this time, when so many things are happening that we don't like, keep in mind your great power of creativity and destruction. Y'all, there are so many things that are happening now that I don't like. I don't like the fact that Northwest had a long-serving minister and music director that were serving them ably and well, and both of them had to retire early due to illness at the worst possible moment for churches. I don't like that echoes what happened to your very first minister ever, Reverend Gentile. I don't like the fact that there is still so much work to do in this community, even as there is so much grief to heal. It's not fair, and you don't deserve it. I don't like the fact that every year First UU Detroit has to open up its books and decide whether it can keep going or not. I don't like the fact that I know several Unitarian Universalist ministers who pre-candidated there but decided that they couldn't come live in the city because of racism and poverty. I don't like the fact that the church that seeded all of the other churches in the area doesn't know if it can still survive because of that same racism and poverty. I don't like it. I don't like that there's so much war. I don't like that there's so much disease. I don't like that there's so much rampant injustice. And I got into this gig because I thought that our communities coming together in collaboration could do something about all of those things to give me a kernel of hope in the world. And I look around and we're so beleaguered. We're so beleaguered. Our budgets are too thin. Our volunteers are too few. We're so worried about the bottom line that we never make it to the deeper value. We're just trying to survive. And sometimes I kind of want to get away from it all and wonder if it's worth it, right? But then I remember that I have a choice too. I've got that same ball inside of me burning, and I have a choice whether to destroy or to build up. Actually, coming up, we all have a choice, because it's that time again for the UUA. They're going to ask us, what are you doing about ministry next year? And look, I'm not a bad preacher, and there's a shortage of ministers. I could try to find a congregation that would pad my family's budget and get me away from proximity to all the things I don't like. But they wouldn't go away, and it would take me away from my community. And you all could try to get your own ministers, each for your own individual congregations. You could try to do that. The UUA is advising that it's going to be slim pickings again this year, but you could try, or we could admit that the old way isn't working. We could admit that the old way isn't working, and that maybe we could do something new together, two communities on the same journey, having faith in the only thing that we all agreed to have faith in the first place: each other. Look, that story that we had, it's apocryphal. It's apocryphal. But if you made it into a Unitarian Universalist congregation this morning, I believe that there is a chance that some divine or enigmatic force did put a burning ball of justice inside of you. I believe that you do, that we do have the power to create and destroy. That story this morning, it was apocryphal. But my people, they have superpowers. So let's stop arguing about what we get in and amongst each other and start building the world that other people need us to before they know that they even need us. It's the only way we're going to grow the faith. Maybe, just maybe, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. 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 We are the ones, we've been waiting.
Please repeat after me. We extinguish this flame but not the light of hope.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of hope.
The warmth of community.
The warmth of community.
Or the fire of commitment.
Or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts.
These we carry in our hearts.
Until we are together again.
Until we are together again. I so rarely read things off paper, I don't know where they are. But I want to read something today. I want to read as our benediction words from the First UU and the Northwest websites. First UU says, we've always been daring about where we worship. We've picked up and moved church buildings. We've constructed new buildings at the fringes of established society. We've donated our current buildings to another social justice organization, and we remain where we are. We've persevered and we've prospered. We've bought and sold. We've organized and disbanded. We've reorganized congregations, merged them, separated, and merged them again, and thought outside the box, with the result that our current congregation is still here. Northwest says, this congregation has grown and nurtured itself for more than 50 years. The church building has become a home filled with memories of marriages, children, growing, learning, laughter, tears, chalice lightings, and memorial services. In 1952, the members of this congregation provided a foundation for the future. They dreamed and they worked to bring their dreams into fruition. Our challenge now is to ensure that we and our children and the others to come will have a spiritual haven that we have had. With our commitment, there will be more marriages and chalice lightings and many more dreams shared within this church home. May it be so. Blessed be and amen. Go in peace and return in love.